to episode 5 of the Infernal 403 podcast, the most dangerous and diverse podcast out there in hockey land.
I agree.
Before we introduce our esteemed guest today, I'd like to introduce our sponsor, Chris Ainsworth, Broken Spirits.
Hey everybody. Thanks for having me.
And guys, y'all know me. Y'all know that I'm the biggest booster of Mr. Ryan Pinder, the GOAT. It's the GOAT, ladies and gentlemen. He is here today joining us at the Broken Spirits distillery. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's the GOAT's a lot. I don't know that that's warranted, necessary, and it does lead me to wonder about the mental state of our friend here. The compliments are good. And thanks for having us here at Broken Spirits. Excited about that. And I believe I'm also supposed to say, fuck you, Primo.
We do have, of course, we have Neil here. He's the king of Flames Twitter.
I can't even say F you back because I respect.
And of course, we have Shameen. We have Noah Adler, president of the Blasty fan club.
Yes.
Mr. Jason Bizek, and of course, Kobe Edgman. So, guys, we're here. We're with the GOAT. We got a lot of questions, right? We got a lot of questions today.
I think so.
So let's start with Chris, because I know Chris wanted to have a question or two.
First question, right?
Question? Oh yeah. Well, let's talk about booze. Let's talk about chips. I feel like there has to be some of that interaction. Because did you ever get around to trying the Miss Vicky's Spicy Dill?
A big fan.
Oh.
Yeah, it's hard to find these days. It's rare. It's like an Oilers pick beyond the first round, actually playing in the league. So, well, you might find one. Hard.
Very.
Yeah, like there's an Ethan Bear and probably like a Caleb Jones floating around, but it's not like looking at Tampa Bay. You used to be able to find them. They're popular. I feel like the show takes a lot of credit for that, whether we had anything to do with it or not. But we're pumping the Spicy Dills pretty hard.
Love
Big
it.
fans. So yeah, I feel like if you need any snacks at the distillery, you got to go Spicy Dills if you can get them.
For sure.
Yeah,
For sure. They are hard to come by. I agree. That's it. That's all I got.
good. Right on.
Right on. Cool.
There's the icebreaker.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, this is a Flames-focused podcast, so I kind of want to delve into the Flames first, if you're okay with that. Hell yeah.
I think about right talking about the Flames.
So, I saw an article not long ago. It was a humorous in nature. They basically had an analysis of all 31 teams.
Okay.
And they looked at what the fan base thinks what's wrong with the team, and what this writer thinks what's wrong with the team.
Okay.
And what they said about the Flames is, we wasted Mark Giordano's, late bloom. And it got me thinking that the Flames have a history of that. They've wasted Jerome McGinley's prime. They wasted Mika Kiprusoff's prime. They did waste what we had of Mark Giordano, because at a certain point in time, he was considered the best defenseman in the league.
2 years ago, right?
Yeah, when he won the Norris, and it's looking like things aren't changing considering our current core with Johnny and Monty and Chucky.
Okay.
So I kind of want to get your thoughts on what other people are thinking about our team in that aspect.
Yeah, so I think when you say wasted their prime, I think what you're probably meaning is you didn't go on a deep run and you didn't trade them when their value was high. Because those are the two routes you'd want to take. If you're not going to keep a guy long term, get maximum value for him, or if you are going to keep a guy that you think's a really elite player, you hope to have success with them. So if they played better in 2019 in the playoffs and beat Colorado, who knows? Maybe you don't feel that way about Gio.
Yeah.
But they certainly waited too long to trade Jerome. I think everyone around the organization would acknowledge that. There's not a ton of holdover from that era. That was Jay Feaster at general manager at that point, if I'm correct. And you could add Jay Bomeister to that list. He's not a sexy player in the sense of look at all these trophies, look at all these points, but he was a really important player. You look at his resume, the hardware trophy case is pretty darn good with Olympics, and does get his cup in St. Louis, kind of. So there's, you could make that case as well. So when you've got Ben Hanowski, Mark Kandari, Kenny Agostino, 2 late first rounders for Bomeister and Iginla, that's really not enough, is it?
Not at all.
So, and Rito Berra, they turned into a second, so, but then they drafted a plug, so.
Hunters.
And that was the Brian Burke's time there when they did that with a swap. But I think the case is well made in the sense that I think the great challenge that I think the fans have with the organization right now is like, what are you trying to do? Because if you're trying to win a Stanley Cup, it doesn't look like that's what's happening. It looks like you want to be just good enough to get in. And there is a bit of a case of like, well, if you get in, anything can happen. Montreal showed that. Like, I don't think this team looked worse than Montreal in the regular season, really. They all played them when they played them. They're kind of similar profiles, deeper teams, lacking major stars, could rely on goaltending. Obviously, you need to see the Flames do that in the spring to say that they could do it. I don't know that they could at all, but they didn't look different in the regular season. So I guess the challenge that, you know, the fans or other people working in the organization or management or even the ownership is, we're trying to win a cup, because that probably requires breaking things down before building them up again a bit. Or we just like, okay, get into the postseason, look at the division we're in, and look at every year there's a team that goes on a run. Could you be a Dallas? Could you be a Montreal? Could you be, you know, even St. Louis was last place in the NHL early January, a year they won the cup. So weird things happen. Just get in is one of those philosophies, but it does kind of feel like they've got one foot in, like, boy, you really should. You only got 2 years left of Monahan. You only got, 2 years left of team control on Matthew Tkachuk. Maybe they extend him, who knows. You've only got 1 year left on Johnny Gaudreau, and now you've got 1 year left on Mark Giordano, who's probably played himself from Norris to, well, he's still a first pair guy to, well, he's probably a second pair guy. And now he might be gone for nothing if he's exposed to Seattle. We'll see how that goes. So that's the conundrum the team's in. So I think, the article that you're referencing, it's like, that's a pretty fair point. Did they maximize value in a trade? Like, I think they tried to with Dougie Hamilton and Michael Furlan, but the guy they had ahead of the deal's already won at Norris, so that's tough. Right? And I think Hamilton's probably going to win one or two, and if Fox wins one in his young 20s, he's probably not done. Yeah. And it's like Lindholm's a good player, and Hannafin's like a good second pair defenseman, but like those guys are winning trophies.
Yeah.
Like maybe Lindholm could get into a Selke type conversation down the road, but like that's not him now. And already these other guys, it's like Dougie's getting votes for the Norris every year, pretty much, probably for the next few, and Fox might have his name on that thing a bunch. Like, tough to call that deal a win right now. Hear the exhale there? It's disappointing. But that was like they were trying to maximize, right? That was like, okay, we're not going to run Dougie to the end of his contract. And there's other circumstances, but yeah, they got to figure out what they're doing. Like, who's your core, and when are you winning? Is it now or is it later?
Speaking of disappointing, Pranil Prasad's got a few questions for Ryan.
Disappointing, huh? You're the disappointment. but glad. Thanks for taking the time to be here. How's the Twins?
Twins are good. Yeah, we just had to call an audible. We were going to go to the pool. Now we're going to go to the skate park today. So never boring.
Nice.
Always busy.
Yeah, fatherhood could be tough. Like I'm watching Noah and Chris, and it's tough. My question is,
their dads you're talking to, or
I'm dead.
Oh, okay.
But my question is, with draft coming, with Gio maybe getting exposed, what do you think the Flames should do in the off season? What if Ryan Pinder was the GM of the Calgary Flames? How would you operate?
Well, I guess how much can we unwind? I mean, you're not going to fire the coach you just hired, right?
Yeah.
No GM's going to be allowed to do that. You're going to put a fourth coach on payroll, assuming they're still paying Peters and Jeff Ward. Like that's, and not that I would, but I mean, if you wanted to rebuild, you're probably not putting all your chips on Darryl being the guy to do that. But I think you obviously need to make a decision on Johnny Gaudreau this offseason. I don't think the best course of action is to take him into season and, let's move him to the deadline if things aren't going well. Because what if you're in that mushy middle where they lived a lot the last 20 years? It's like if you're 2 points out or 2 points in, we'll keep him. So, you can lose that asset for nothing. Or, he's been really durable, but what if he gets injured 2 weeks before the deadline and no one wants him all of a sudden? You cannot lose a player of that caliber for nothing. To Kofi's point earlier, there's been a lot of that. Yeah. So this is the offseason. You either trade him or you extend him. What does that number look like? No idea. What is the team interested in paying him? No idea. What does Johnny want to make? No idea. But I think there's yeses and nos for both sides in there. Johnny, we'll give you $5 million a year for 7 years. He's not going to say yes. Hey, Flames, pay me $10 million a year for 8 years. They're not going to say yes. But there should be some middle ground where, like, I think if you look at something that started with a 7 or maybe even an 8, depending on term, but the Flames have to want to, like, they got to believe, okay, we're going to invest that kind of money in a guy. Like, that's 10% of our cap at this point. It's an $8 million player. that's a guy you need to know is going to work with this coach and that is going to help you win. And there's certainly a lot of skeptics about Johnny's ability to play his best hockey in the postseason, right? So that's the big decision. And I think similarly, Matthew Tkachuk's a big decision as well, because he can just accept the qualifying offer and walk to free agency in 2 years. The real looking back, like, geez, that last year at $9 million, that's really an issue. Because I don't think he's a $9 million player. He could be. And I think we all expected the cap to keep growing, as it would have if you didn't have a pandemic. But now you're in flat cap land and you're like, that $9 million qualifying offer, that's going to be the fly in the ointment here on negotiating a new deal. Because if he doesn't like the numbers the Flames are saying on an extension, like, I'll just take my $9.
Yeah.
Be a free agent in a year, and you guys come back to me then, talk to me. But like, why would I play for $7 if I can just play for $9 and then get to free agency and talk to every team?
Yeah.
You're going to get better deals if you're a player if you've got 32 people that can hire you, not one. So that's an interesting one. And then prior to all that, probably is just whether you have your captain or not, because that's a lot. That's your culture. That's your leadership group. And I think it's probably a team that had some cultural issues in the room. So, I mean, if I'm the GM, if anyone's the GM, I think those are the three really obvious things you got to address. And like, I've been really troubled with the results that Sean Monahan's posted for 2 years. So, what is he?
Yeah.
If you don't know what a guy is and he's this deep into his career, probably not a good sign. And it's not like, well, we thought he was a checker, but now he's blossomed. It's like, no, he used to be really good. And now it's like, if he's not shooting it well, what else is he good at?
Yeah.
So there's lots. I think it's a really tough offseason for the GM, but I mean, he's not shy. He's in on everything. You know, maybe we talked with Elliot recently on the show, and, you know, they're in there on Eichel. Not that they'd be alone, but, you know, there's going to be change, man.
Speaking on that, how frustrating do you find it that Brad Treliving is on everything, but doesn't seem to come out a winner on anything?
Well, I mean, I don't know that's fair. Like, when he made the Kadri deal and Nazem used a trade restriction to kibosh it, like, is that really his fault? It's like, well, you should have made a better pamphlet to present to Nazem on the positive aspects about Berlin. Guy didn't want to come here relative to potentially staying in Toronto or some other options. That's not the GM's fault. Now, it sounded like they were really close on Josh Anderson. It sounded like they were really close on at least conversations regarding Pierre-Luc Dubois. But until we don't get to see what was on the table. So it's like, man, he should have just got that done. Well, what if they gave up too much?
My issue is the Mark Stone thing. Like, that one hurts. That one really
Well, but
hurts.
what do you extend it here? That's an assumption.
Yeah, that's true.
Like Mark Stone makes what? I'm thinking
9.5.
9.5.
Yeah.
Max term, no state tax,
Yeah, it's
stated preference to play in, you know, a climate that doesn't have winter, to go to an organization that had his old GM from junior, if I'm correct, and head coach, I think.
But to follow up on that,
Like you wouldn't have wanted to give up what they were rumored to be giving up for a rental for Mark Stone. You still might have lost to Colorado.
yeah.
So imagine if you gave up all that for 2 months of Mark Stone and they don't get out of the first round. You'd be crushing them for it. Why did they do that deal?
But to that point, what do you think about GMs? Like, let me give you an example. Like the Columbus GM, Jarmo Kekalainen. How do you think about GMs who make cutthroat moves like that? Like, they were going to keep Bobrovsky and Panarin for that run, no matter what happened, and they lost both.
Yeah. Well, they also they swept Tampa that year, didn't they?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, where are you in your life cycle as an organization? Do you believe you have a chance to win? Are you willing to roll the dice on losing a guy? And I think more and more in the NHL, it's not like, how could you lose that asset for nothing? It's like, well, what kind of cap space can we gain if this player goes away?
Now
So like real quick, the example I'm thinking of would be, I think Rhett got fired up that the Oilers would possibly risk losing Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for nothing. Like, oh my gosh, how could you do that? It's horrible asset management. It's like, you're not losing for nothing. You're losing Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for what you would have needed to pay him to keep him, and which turns out was a pretty good deal for the Oilers with lots of term. What could you use that money for in the market? It's not like we had this guy and he's gone. You were going to use that cap space and turn it into something else. Go ahead.
Well, we all know, because we listen to Ryan in the morning. We all know his hockey knowledge of the Flames, NHL, all that. I wanted to focus a little bit more before we get into hockey talks with you guys. Not a lot of people know how Ryan kind of came up, right? Broadcasting, and I know Noah's been he's about to take broadcasting first year in SAIT, and I know Noah had some questions for you.
Cool, right on.
So Ryan, I want to ask you just when was a moment in your life that this is what you wanted to do for a career?
I don't know if there's like one eureka, here it is, like the lightning bolt over my head and everything changed and there was the before and after. No, it was more just like it was something I was always interested in. I always loved pouring over stats. I always loved talking about sports. I loved doing hockey pools. The first spreadsheet I ever did was for a hockey pool. Like I just loved that, and I don't know that I always knew it would end up going that way, but I always knew that this was like the greatest passion I have is to talk about sports, and I love diving into numbers, and I love heated debates, and I like talking about sports. It's cool, right? It's what's united all you guys. It's fun. It's like, imagine if we were all talking about like buses, and you're like, oh my gosh, did you see that school bus going down Deerfoot? Yeah, like no, I was busy. I was up on Stony Trail. You should have seen this one going by. It was one of those touring buses with musicians. Like, oh, I heard about that touring bus. Yeah, we were down over. Like, it's okay to talk about business like we do in sport, but any other industry, you'd be bleeping crazy to talk about that way. Like, I think there's Dave Barry, this writer for Detroit, way back. He was a satirist, really funny guy, and he was always like, imagine if someone like recorded stats and numbers of like trains and how much they towed and like where they were on the grid in North America. You'd be like, this person's fucking crazy. But if it's all of a sudden it's like Brett Favre and passing yards, you're like, that's totally normal. Right? So, like, it's great. It's fun. We love talking about sports. We all grew up, like, engaging in sports in some way or another. The greatest coup sports ever did was, like, naming teams after cities. Now, even if you're into a sport or not, it's like their city's name is on that team. That's us, right? And so it unites cities. Like, I was here in 4 when the place went bananas. Like, it was crazy. I remember my parents in '89, like, leaving me with the babysitter to go down to Electric Ave after they won the cup. Like, these are massive uniting moments for cities in sport. It's not the same as like Bombardier wrapping up a contract and people like running into the streets celebrating and taking their shirts off. It's really weird, but we love sports, right? So I've always liked talking about it. And then I didn't have enough experience to, I think, go right out of high school into college, or at least I'd convinced myself of that. I didn't have like super strong marks in school. They were fine. But I was like, okay, I got to work on a backup plan. So while I was at university, I spent all my free time in Lethbridge at the campus community radio station, doing shows, sitting on the board of directors. We worked on FM application, did some play-by-play by the end. So 4 years later, I have a degree in management, but really what I did is I had a portfolio of work in broadcasting, in play-by-play, in hosting, in understanding the radio business. Now I was a guy that could be employed, that had my hands on the wheel enough to, okay, this is a viable career option. And then I did a quick 1-year postgraduate course in Toronto at Humber College. And from there I was hired to Fort St. John, BC. So I went from living in Toronto next to a subway stop on Bloor and Bathurst to some dirt roads in Fort St. John, which was the worst thing that ever happened to my social life. The best thing that ever happened to my broadcasting career. And then 4 years working for the V's and the VCHL, first class organization, amazing city. Everyone goes in the summer, but all the people that stay in the winter are typically older, and it's a really hardcore hockey fan base. They love their junior A hockey. Kids with scullies every year going to the States. Really got to understand the hockey side of the industry a lot more there. And from there to the Abbotsford Heat, doing a similar role, play-by-play communications, so writing press releases, calling the games. In Penticton, I got to put my hands on everything from like writing the ads to selling, advertising to the people that advertise in the broadcast. We'd do a show from a pub every week where we invited season ticket holders and film it and put that on the net, and to help build recruiting packages for players that were coming in and giving them tours around the rink, all that. So that was good. Abbotsford was amazing. And then with the timing of the lockout, there was a lot of interest in what was happening with the Abbotsford Heat when I was there. What's going on there? There's no Flames. Like, let's call Pinder. So there was a bit of a opportunity for me to have a voice in this market. And I started doing some summer fill-in. And sure enough, things ended in Abbotsford. I was doing summer fill-in at the Fan. And Andrew Walker got a job offer. And that opened up a spot in the morning show. So long story short, long winding road. But, back to pulling out the sports section before school, pouring through the stats. This is always something I was like, I'd like to do that.
So I guess one thing for a quick follow-up here before we pass it back to Lou is I've been listening to the station since I was 6 years old when Mike Richards was still doing it.
Yep.
And I think you guys have been just, you just keep working hard and just keep on doing the hard work you guys do. This show's been amazing the last 7 to 10
Cheers
years.
to that.
So
Cool,
cheers
man.
to that. Cheers
Appreciate
to
that. Yeah. No, and you know what? It's fun and it's spirited, and it's sometimes cringy and sometimes hysterical, and sometimes it's everything, right? When you do something 200 plus times a year, there's going to be some good ones, there's going to be some great ones, there's going to be some average ones, there's going to be some stinkers, but we have a lot of fun. We get a lot of really talented people that have worked on that show, and continue to. So pretty lucky, and a lot of timing along the way to get to that show. But the show doesn't matter if there's not guys like you listening.
Exactly.
And more gals listening, and people streaming and podcasting it. This is a passion that, we get to do because people care. If you guys aren't listening, I'm hooped. I'm a cool boy.
Now, before I move on to questions from Shameen, are there any good stories you could tell us about, good ones about Rhett or Pat or Boomer?
Oh man, it'd be like asking you guys, do you have any stories about each other for the last 10 years? Geez, you can go for hours. That's all you have.
What's one really good one? Let's pick Dean. Let's go with Dean.
Oh man, there's just 1,000 instances. We went golfing with listeners. Anytime we have a contest with listeners, it's always just 2 months since we end up getting pulled with. So we had golf with Dean and Pinder, and Dean doesn't like being on the golf course much to begin with, and now I literally hit the warden with a drive in his cart, and these two guys were with. Dean's just always by the 9th hole. He's like, "Get me the fuck out of here, please." But then in Miami, we were there last year for a client trip, right? Probably during the pandemic, but we thought it was before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And he's got a bunch of drinks and not having to wake up at 4 a.m. and he's the life of the party, fun to be with.
Yeah.
And he's an immensely talented, funny, interesting individual. And I love the contrast of our lives and of our backgrounds. That's what makes it interesting. If we have 2 Deans or 2 Ryans on a show, we just nod and agree and sing Kumbaya and hold hands. It's because he's from the small town on the prairies, and I grew up in the city. And because this food scares him, and I'm like, no, I like that, and that tension is important. You need a little conflict.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of sitcoms or successful TV shows where there isn't a conflict. It's like every bloody TV show is about a cop or about crime, or hey, let's put one rocket 10 girl who's about to get married with 10 dudes jacked up to get married. There's gonna be some conflict there too. That's what's entertaining. It's not entertaining if it's here's a date with 2 people that like each other.
Yeah.
You need to add something crazy, and then people will watch it. There's an element to that to our show. You need different people and different personalities, and I just have vivid memories of Dean ramming macaroons into people's mouths, sneaking up behind, at some fancy restaurant in Miami. But we're looking back a month later, we're he gave everyone COVID products. He's patient zero, or whatever we call that.
And they said my people ate bats. No, it's not.
There's no bats.
It's actually macarons. Boomer was playing Oprah. You get a COVID, and you get a COVID, and you get a COVID.
No, those trips are awesome. They're tons of fun. And Rhett's just he's absolutely what you see is what you get. He's a ton of fun. Everyone loves him. He sort of plays the dumb guy, but he sure ain't.
Yeah.
He's a savvy cat. He's smart. And his success on the ice and in team sport was that he was a uniting guy in the room that everyone loved. He could relate to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely what he is off the ice as well.
Yeah.
People love being around him.
Chris?
Is there speak about your career, is there a moment that really like stuck out to you as something you're really proud of being a part of or doing?
It was weird. The first year I got to Penticton, the team won a championship, and those are always the moments that, like, for teams are important, but for the broadcaster, you're able to have anything to do with it. But you just want to make sure you don't screw up the call. And when you're a play-by-play guy, that's kind of what you want. You don't want to mess up the big calls. You want to nail them. Like you think of the golden goal call from Cuthbert, and even like lightning strikes twice. I think he did that with, and they won the cup a week ago.
Yeah.
But as a morning show guy, it's something totally different. Sports talk and play-by-play are totally different beasts, and typically attract different personalities. So I don't know. When I was in Abbotsford, Barry Brust set the American Hockey League record for consecutive shutout minutes, and that was really cool to be a part of, because I'm doing the media side of things too, so I'm lining up with interviews with all these big media outlets, and you want to make sure you get the call right. But I think there's lots that we've been really proud of how we've done, and I don't know, there's one.
I want to say
I love
Eric
going to
Francis.
Denny's. There you go. I will say this. No, I did not receive any more praise than when I guess put Eric in a spot to like give us more information or acknowledging that maybe he wasn't being 100% honest with us with the way he's talked to people following the Flames or the fan base about, well, Johnny's just not going to sign here. I said, well, how do we know that? So I just did a lot of people that probably would have no interest in me saying their names publicly, but a lot of people reached out and were like, yes, thank you for doing that. It's about time that happened. That's a little bit of BS. And Eric does a good job at what he's paid to do, which is generate interest, create clicks. He works on a lot of different platforms. He writes, he can come on the radio, he does TV. He's a talented guy, but I just really didn't see eye to eye at all with him on the Johnny take. And it felt kind of to me like this manufactured whipping boy scenario where it's like, just because you've said it a lot doesn't mean it's true. Like if you just chant it and repeat it, that doesn't make it a fact.
Yeah.
And then when Johnny comes up and says he wants to resign you, it's like, well, okay, your word, his word, what do you know? And a lot of people like that, but I wouldn't say that's like the proudest moment of my career.
I was the most proud.
I know, yeah.
I
Part of
tweeted,
my fan
tweeted Pinder was the GOAT, is the GOAT, about
That's
10
when that
times.
started, I think, yeah.
No.
I mean, I think Flames Twitter just got really excited that finally someone put him on blast, kind of thing.
Yeah, and you know what? Eric does a lot of really good stuff, and he'll break a lot of news, and he's got a lot of great sources, but sometimes it just feels like, oh, that's a miss. Like, I recall him chatting with Rob Kerr, saying, I will bet my mortgage that the Flames are moving to Houston. And I was just like, I am going to pull this SUV into the ditch, launch an airbag into my face if I have to hear this again. Because it just felt like such hooey. But, I mean, maybe that was the info he was getting at the time. Maybe his very good sources were saying exactly that. It doesn't have to be sinister and evil that he was saying that. Maybe that's literally double-checked in multiple places what people were telling him. And if you were the Calgary Flames owner, that would be the right type of rumor to start, or their president, or anyone who had a vested interest of getting more public money put towards the building. It's like, well, tell them this is happening. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I mean, we can vilify a guy to be like, look at him fabricating stuff. Well, maybe he's being fed bullshit by somebody else.
That's true. Well, that pretty much happened in Edmonton, right? I mean, that was the whole...
They went and watched a Monday Night Football game in Seattle,
Yeah.
right? Cates and Wayner and the rest of the old Red Wine Club or whoever was in it at the time. We'll get you all in the hall, boys. Kevin Lowe, come on in with us. 40 years later.
I think I know something about winning.
Yeah. He's booking concerts, I think, now. Just kidding, Kevin. Just kidding. You're a good player. You're a really good player. Yeah, for the shot. I don't know where we're at. We're off on a tangent now.
Jason?
First, I want to congratulate you on your NHL Stanley Cup bracket.
Thank you.
You guessed all correct except for 3 series, I believe.
I had Toronto beating Montreal in round 1, and then I went 2 for 4 in round, what would that be? 3? Round 2. I had Colorado winning, and I had Boston beating the Islanders. But, I mean, it's a crapshoot. I can't get all serious pretending I'm good at this because next year I'm going to go, what would it be? Probably 3-12 rather than 12-3.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. Like, does me picking the Jets to beat the Oilers on our show play well? You're damn right it does. Because I believe in my heart of hearts that the Jets are going to beat them. Not necessarily. But is it always fun to like know who your audience is and give them something to chuckle and laugh about, and maybe twist the knife a little?
I mean, we enjoyed it.
Yeah. I'm also looking forward to
Stupid Toronto, like perfect. Man, like if honestly, if Tavares doesn't have his brain rattled by the knee of Corey Perry, that might be sweet. They won the next 3, and they were shell shocked after that. And everyone's going to be like, Montreal, what did they do? We got to copy it. It's like, wow, they were that close to being swept.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
And that's why I talk about this tournament being a crapshoot, because it's like, Bergevin would have been fired. Ducharme's not coming back. Maybe it's time to call Seattle and ask what they think about Carey Price. He's from that area. He owns land over there. And instead it's just like, here we are, contenders. Give this guy an extension. You get an extension. You get an extension. Right? And it's like really a posting out and a posting in. They had 2 overtimes in games, 5 and 6 in that series?
Yeah.
Like post in, post out, that's literally changing lives. Like Mark Bergevin will now be able to buy a full walk-in closet full of red suits with his new contract. Not able to do that if it's like
Get rid of that green
post
jacket.
went in from the Leafs, right? It's in one of those 1-goal games of which they played a bunch.
It sounded like Waz gonna come in instead of Ducharme.
Totally,
That's the talk. That's
Well,
the talk.
that was the joke on the show, is that like nobody's more pissed about the Habs run than Patrick Waugh, because he was going to get the keys, maybe, right?
Yeah.
And he's a guy that wants a little control on the player personnel side, and definitely dabbled in that when he was in Colorado, and runs his own program in Quebec. Like that was a pretty plausible outcome at that point when they were down 3-1 in that series.
Yeah. I also can't wait to hear you talk with Elliot Friedman about snooker in the upcoming off season.
Very excited.
But seriously, about hockey now. We mentioned the Flames' front end and the changes that you would make there. Let's talk about the back end, because Gio is probably going to go. At least that's the talk.
It could happen.
We definitely need a second-string goaltender.
Yep.
So what are you doing on the back end to replace Gio and get a goalie?
So if Gio goes, the only, I guess, silver lining is, well, there's a few. I guess you get to reshuffle your leadership group. You get to sort of pass the torch to the younger guys. Maybe that's Matthew Tkachuk. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's Lindholm. I don't know. I always said I thought Valimacki's going to be the next captain, but he's got to start playing better. The maturity everyone loves. But, I mean, it feels to me like Tkachuk's an A, like Marchand's an A, not necessarily a C. Like, can that guy really go to the refs and ask for...
Yeah.
No, it's up. And I'm not asking Tkachuk to change the way he plays, but it's just a role that he plays. It doesn't match well with the letter C, and it isn't a shot. It's just the way that things work, and I think he's a great player. But on the back end, if you lose Gio, you've got almost $7 million to go get defensemen. So 3 of your top 4, Anderson, Hanifin, and Tanev. You're looking at a left shot. That's not a hard thing to find in free agency. If you look at last year, some of the prices for guys were really reasonable with flat cap. You might be able to bring in 2 defensemen that are veteran type, that are more trustworthy, that give you more stability for a Daryl Sutter type team. So could you go get like Sammy Vatanen and then maybe a more rough and tumble stay-at-home guy? You bring back Michael Stone, and now Valimacki's got to fight for a spot in there. That's a better decor than one that's got like Nikita Nesterov on it a lot. So that's probably what you do on the blue line if you lose Gio. You got money to spend in free agency. And then the backup goalie thing is like, okay, who's going to come play for $1.5 million? Because you see how Daryl uses his goalies. You can't budget much money for a guy that's hardly going to play. But you do need someone that if there's an injury, you can trust to carry it for a couple of weeks, right? So there's a lot of names out there for goalies. They won't be shopping in the main bin, like with Freddie Anderson and some of the bigger names, but there's a lot of guys that are probably somewhere between 30 and 70 in the world in their goaltending ability, and there's not a lot separating them. And every year it's like relievers in baseball. There's a lot of volatility. but there's a lot of really capable backups. You want Dustin Wolf to be playing a ton in the American League. You want Tyler Parsons healthy so you can see if he's good at hockey against men. And you probably need to find a veteran to put with Wolf that isn't so out of his element that you could call him up to the NHL if you get an injury. Because I don't think you want Wolf as a backup in the NHL. You want him to play.
Especially if he plays the way he played this season. And
he had a small sample, but after his first game, he settled in the American League. That's a positive with Zari's season as well. He looked really good at the American League level. So, I mean, it's not easy work, but I think there's, at this point, with $7 million in cap space at Geo leaves-ish, you can find some solutions with, and they're not up against it. Like, they really don't have a bad contract outside of Lucic's, which was traded for a worse contract than Neal's, kind of, depending on your viewpoint. At least he can fulfill a role that helps the team. And so if you just say, okay, don't look at his number, look at the guy that we got rid of, and this guy's here instead. You prefer Lucic on this team than you would Neal. 1 year in, the Oilers certainly preferred Neal to Lucic, but now that he's been pushed out of the top six and isn't, like, when he's not getting power play reps and playing with stars, he's useless. He's not a bottom six player. So that looks ugly for them at the moment. So that's the only bad deal. So they should have some flexibility financially as a result of that, right? Like, they're not up against it. They're not like, man, we got to part ways with a guy that we really like because we can't afford him. That's not where they're at, but it's also because they're not really superstar, it seems.
Yeah. Just a quick follow-up question. You mentioned that you're not going to tell Tkachuk how to play. Did somebody tell Tkachuk how to play after that Leaf game?
It sure looked like it, didn't it?
It sure did.
There's a lot of tea leaves. I mean, I don't think anyone's got anything on the record about what happened there, but sure shit looked like somebody said something to someone.
Yeah.
I don't know who that was. I don't know if it was a collection of people. I don't know if it was one person. I don't know if it was said with great intent and misinterpreted by Tkachuk. There's a lot of gray in there. And I do get, like, two sides of it. One of it is like, okay, you're a team that I think lacks really intense, self-motivated, like, pit bulls, right? That's not their DNA as a group, generally speaking. They're a little quieter and meeker, generally speaking. But Tkachuk is one of those guys. So one school of thought is, how dare you tell that kind of guy to rein it in when you know how important that is to this group? The flip side is, don't throw a tantrum when you just lost the 2-2 against the Leafs at the final buzzer. Your time to stir up shit was before you lost. And you don't play them again for a month. That energy is better focused on Montreal, who you're going to play in 3 nights when you travel there, or whatever it was. And so I understand people saying, like, if it was Gio or the leadership group or anyone that said that to them, get them out of here. But there's also, like, dude, pick your spots better. Pick your spots. And that's not a foreign concept to pests. The whole reason that makes them so good is they perfectly know how to pick their spots. That was a shitty spot to pick. Because it didn't matter. The game was over. And now, you know, they're in your head. Save it. You had, what, at that point you would have had 7 left against Toronto. You got all kinds of runway to get even. So it was just, I thought it was a little bit of immaturity from Tkachuk, but also, like, man, you got to be careful. That guy's their engine emotionally, right? And then all of a sudden for 2 weeks, you're just like, where is he?
Where'd he go?
Where is he? And then I also should bring up, like, Haley Salvian wrote an article, I think, yesterday. I don't know when this is going to go live, but she noted that she's got intel from the Tkachuk camp that he played through a lot of injuries and that there wasn't a lot of public disclosure of the kind of things he was dealing with, and that he didn't have the off season that he wanted to have physically. When you think about how tight a turn it was from his concussion in the bubble, and those games went into what, September when they handed out the cup, to like a start of January. He usually trains with Gary Roberts in Toronto. Crossing the border wasn't a thing. That guy's off season, at least reading all those arrows being pointed at one thing, wasn't the one that he wanted to have or that he normally has. And so you put in all those factors, and it's a really down year for Tkachuk. But I think if you look at all those things, there's reason that it should be a major bounce back year next year, right? And I liked him, Johnny, and Lindholm. I hope they were paying attention, and if they get Johnny at a tidy number, I think Johnny's numbers have been suppressed playing with Monahan for 2 years. If you give him those two guys, man, 100%. You might be back to like 90-point top 10 in scoring, Johnny. And if you get that guy signed for 7-something, that's a steal.
It is. You are listening to the Infernal 403 podcast, sponsored by Broken Spirits Distillery, 3320 14th Ave, Northeast Unit 4. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Right on.
Now, we got one more thing for you.
Okay.
So our friend Kent Wilson played this game with us.
Oh, I heard this is tough. I'm not excited about this.
Kent really, let's be honest, right? Kent shit the bed. I'm sorry, Kent.
Oh, if Kent shit the bed, I'm dead here. I'm pooping my pants if you shit the bed.
So it's called Into the Fire. It's 8 questions about your Calgary Flames.
Okay.
Noah Adler, ever since he took over the questionnaire, has made it extremely difficult for everyone.
Trivia master.
And Kent Wilson got 2 right. I got one of them for him. So Kent,
we got 1 right. Okay.
Yeah, we got 1 right. He was going to show up today, but he said 10 o'clock was too early because, he's Kent Wilson.
He gets into the red wine.
He's a king.
I like Kent. Kent's a good guy. Kent's a good read. I feel like if people like Kent were running this team, we'd have more success to talk about. So I got all the time.
I said that last week.
Yeah, the Flames, if you're listening,
Well,
hire Ken Wilson analytics. We need them. That's what we need.
yeah, they got guys, and I think that there's just before we get into it real quick, you can hire people that are really smart and have great ideas, but do you empower them? And do they have a voice at the table? And how do you blend those viewpoints with other ones? It's not easy. I think Tampa's found the mix, but there's a lot of teams that haven't. There's a lot of teams that are really analytically strong that don't make analytically strong decisions. So what does that lead you to believe? And then also, in the public space, we only get to see a small amount of it. Like if the beverage is what the NHL teams have, we get the first sip publicly. They get way more depth and detail and better data than we have to deal with. So what we might think is, here's an obviously analytically strong move, the deeper, better data might not agree. So it's a tough thing to measure, but I respect the shit out of the camera, which is the point. Go ahead.
Okay, here we go. Let's get this underway here. It is Into the Fire with Mr. Ryan Pinder.
The GOAT.
The GOAT, yes. Okay, so question number 1.
You didn't just say that, did you?
Oh, Jason.
Amazing.
Okay,
Okay, question 1.
okay, question 1. Who led the Flames in assists in the 1987-88 season?
Okay, so 87-88, we're a couple of years ahead of the Cup. I don't know that Nieuwendyke's arrived yet. I feel like we're probably through the best of Kent Nilsson.
Yeah.
Lou probably scores more than he sets up people. It's got to be an offensive performer. Mullen scored more than he has passed. Are we like Sergei Makarov territory, or is he not arrived yet?
That was, I think, 2 years ago.
Okay, so Makarov's not there. Who would that be? Who was one of those guys that just put up points? I'm not going to say Lanny, because I feel like he wasn't necessarily passing more than he shoots.
Yeah.
He's nodding. I'm getting a lot of cues here. I'm going to say
the back end a little
Was
bit.
it Al McInnes?
No, that is incorrect. It was Gary Suter. At
And
76.
there you go. So I was leaning that way after I stopped coming up with forwards that it could be.
That was your first question?
Yeah.
That was brutal.
That's all right. And Suter actually statistically had some monster years that you hardly noticed because Al was next to him, ripping him in at 100 with wooden sticks.
Okay, so question number 2.
Suter. Okay.
In 2004,
Yep.
how many penalty minutes did Christoph Oliwa register?
Oh my gosh.
So he was there all year, right?
Yeah, he was.
But he would have played, I guess, probably 2/3 of their games. So let's say he's played probably 50-some games.
Are we going to give him a cushion at least?
Multiple choice.
I'm going to say 112.
247.
Holy wow.
These are some ridiculous
He
questions.
did. I think Kevin Simon had a combined 550 penalty minutes. That's,
Yeah, okay, I was way
so
off there.
Twice your answer. You were only counting home games, probably.
Just trying to think, like, at one point they give you credit for misconduct, and at another point they haven't. He would have had a few of those. But he couldn't have had 20 fights.
No.
So he just was hooking and holding and misconducts and probably 10, 15 fights. Okay. My bad. Bad enough. 0 for 2.
Question.
It's okay. It's good. It's good.
How obtuse of you, you know? You should know these things.
We will see if I can nail one of these. I can tie the great Kent Wilson.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are heading into it an Atlanta Flames territory question.
Oh my god. I'm on
All right, see you for now.
Who is the all-time leading goal scorer in the history of the Flames in Atlanta?
Was it the Magic Man?
Nope. Incorrect. It was Eric Vale with 174
Okay.
goals.
Yeah. There wouldn't have been a ton of overlap there with Nelson, would there? How many years?
I think Nilsson came there in the 78-79 season.
So
I think it was just before they left for Calgary.
Okay.
Thinking
Yeah.
about it.
Wouldn't have done that. Good.
Okay. Question number 4. What was Mika Kiprasov's save percentage in the 06-07 season?
6 or 7. So the 03-04 was his best one. That was his best season. Right?
I think 05-06 because he won the best.
So this is that year? Or the year
No,
after?
it's not that. It's year after the best.
I'll say 9-17.
Correct.
What?
Let's go.
Okay. Well, it was a shot in the dark. They all count though. Suck it, Kent.
Yes, 100% of the shots you don't take.
So question number 5. Theo Fleury led the Flames in the 90-91 season in points with 104.
Mm-hmm.
Who was second in points on the 91 squad?
So Nieuwendyk is still there, I think.
He was.
I think Roberts is probably there, but how
Yeah.
hurt is he?
Makarov's there.
Yeah, I was there.
Is it one of those three?
The answer is Al McInnes.
Oh.
With 103 points.
Wow, 103 points for Al.
He was good. Like,
Great.
my dad talked about him so much, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, wow.
Okay, so on to number 6. What early 1980s Flames player was playing in Spain in the 97-98 season?
What? So repeat it.
What early 80s Flames player was playing in Spain in the 97-98 season?
You love this.
I'll
don't
just
you?
say Rob Ramage. I don't know.
Kent Nilsson.
The Magic Man.
Yep.
Okay.
That was like his last year playing professional hockey.
I didn't know there was professional hockey in Spain. That's,
Didn't know there was ice in Spain.
Yeah.
they had some in the cocktails.
Drinks,
I drank.
And now on to number 7. What milestone assist did Robert Regier record in the 08-09 season?
He was what, a 98 draft pick by Colorado. So he's probably got 8 or 9 years in the league.
He wasn't really the big assist guy.
No, he wasn't. He probably has what, like 10 to 15 a year ish.
Mm-hmm.
So he's gonna, I'll say 100 in assists.
Yes, that is correct. They registered his 100th assist early in that season.
I feel good, guys. I got 2.
I'm impressed.
Very impressed.
Okay, so the last question.
Okay.
Question number 8.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go. Okay, so which Flames goaltender had 3 assists in one game?
Oh.
You probably know this.
Is it Shitty Smitty?
No, the answer
Is
is
it Lemelin?
Jeff Reese. 3 assists against San Jose in the 13-1 game.
Yeah, you would have to have played in that era. That's a good call. Okay. Well, I got 2.
You got 2.
Well, 2 out of 8. That's better than you, Kent. I'm sorry, but he's still the GOAT.
I mean,
Still the GOAT.
I don't. We'd go 0 for 20 if Noah kept going with us. Like, I mean, as a diehard Flames fans, I don't keep track of stats.
No, but you know what? It's as long as the standard stays the same, it's like, it's like grading on the curve.
Yeah.
So if everyone in the class at Harvard gets 40 on their exam, and the guy that got 41 gets 100, and the guy that got 35 is like a failure mark. You just got to measure on the curve. That's fine.
Yeah.
So if they're going to be really, really hard, I got 2.
Yeah, it was impressive. Use logical.
I'm impressed. In our next 2 episodes, we have Leah Hextall and then Haley Zavil. So we'll test their knowledge as well.
Awesome.
I think Leah's pretty smart. I think Haley's. I was the one that proposed.
Both really smart. Yeah.
Yeah,
Before you put your shoe in your mouth.
yeah, that's right. But I did propose an arm wrestle competition over Twitter with Haley. And
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
I don't know
People
either.
like
I
that
was
a
just
lot.
one of
People
you
like
know,
that.
you guys know me. I just tweet shit. I don't think about it.
I think we tweeted something who would win in the arm wrestling match between Ryan and Pat.
Oh,
Pat's got the upper body. It's not fair. But if it's and that's like a literal like weightlifting motion. It's like that's when you said like an athletic endeavor. Like he's larger and stronger, but I would absolutely wager on myself in a wrestling match for sure. If we had to box for money, I would take myself there as well. Yeah, he's got the brawn, but he's not the most coordinated.
I like it.
We just want to thank you, Ryan.
Hey, right on. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for coming on.
Nothing but class. Always friendly to me anyway.
Yeah, well, and look, there's lots of people that are always going to say nasty shit all the time, so it's really nice when you guys are real supportive, and it's nice to hear you're doing a good job, because usually it only feels like it's people saying this sucked, that sucked, this sucked. So I appreciate your guys' support, and good on you for starting this. I think it's going to be a hit, and I think you've done a really good job of collecting some really good viewpoints and people that are passionate about the Flames. So good on you.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you, Chris, for hosting. Please come down to Broken Spirits Distillery at 3320 14th Avenue, Northeast, Unit number 4. Order from Column to get 15% promo code. Use the promo code Inferno403. 50% off. They deliver anywhere in the city for free.
The shout out to the kid.
Oh yes.
Good shout out.
One more thing. The jersey is on its way to Harrison. So we just want to shout out Harrison. Harrison is a 4-year-old. Harrison Knapp. He's been diagnosed with leukemia, and so we want to shout him out, and Daniel, his dad. We know that they're having a very tough time, but the videos that I've seen that have been sent to me and the team has seen, I can see that warrior spirit in you, Harrison, and from the bottom of our hearts, we wish you guys well. Johnny Gaudreau-san jersey's coming your way, and just keep fighting, and we got you. So,
Right on.
Well said. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, boys.
Yeah, thanks.
A lot of fun
Coming in.
Okay, have a good one, guys. Thanks.
Take care.
Coke.
what episode are we on?
5.
We're at 5.
Okay.
Wow. This guy's supposed to be the leader, the top dog.
Fucking 12 shows right now, man.
Alright, it's Mike off the table there.
Sorry.
Yeah.
For Neil,
So we're just gonna make it a roster
sometimes
change.
it's better to just stay